Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you join us this evening. My name is Laura Igo. I'm the Jerry and Marguerite Lenfest Chief Curator at the Michener Art Museum, and it is my pleasure to introduce the artist Mark Sfirri. Mark Sfirri received his BFA and MFA in furniture design at the Rhode Island School of Design. His specialty is multi-axis spindle turning, an area that he has been exploring since the early 1990s. His work is included in the permanent collections of 28 public institutions, including the Michener Art Museum. And he is professor emeritus at Bucks County Community College, where he ran the fine woodworking program from 1981 to 2017. Mark is the recipient of many awards, including the Distinguished Educator Award from the Renwick Alliance, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Collectors of Wood Art, and most recently, last year, the Professional Outreach Program's Merit Award from the American Association of Woodturners. His exhibition, The Flower Show, is on view in the Michener's Font Gallery until May 4th, so you still have time to come and see it. And today he will lead us in a behind-the-scenes tour of his studio, showing us through videos and images his process in creating the botanical sculptures in the exhibition. So welcome, Mark. You can take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much, Laura and Jen, who's behind the scenes, for organizing all of this. I had one in between going to RISD in the 70s and teaching. I was also worked for an office furniture manufacturer for 3 years in Rochester, New York. And I sort of feel like that's where I got my engineering degree by on-the-job training. But yeah, I was ran the fine woodworking program for 37 years while also maintaining my own shop, making furniture and sculptural objects in wood. And I always felt that being deeply involved in making was critical to my teaching and vice versa. So today I'm going to first start with a shot of my or of the exhibition. This is sort of a panoramic view of what you'll see if you haven't been to the show, and it includes nearly all the pieces in the exhibit. Before I talk about the show, I'd like to take you on a tour of my studio and talk about how I got to this point in my creative life to develop the forms that you'll see in the exhibition. This is my 900 square foot shop, which was formerly a kennel. It's where I have made all my work for over 40 years, while running the program at Bucks. After retiring in 2017 from full-time teaching, now I've been full-time making for the past 8 years, and I live near New Hope, Pennsylvania. Since I do make furniture, I have the requisite machines for processing wood, like a table saw that's covered with a bunch of junk right here, and a joiner, planer, and bandsaw. The back third of the shop is dedicated to my hand tool area and my lathe setup. This is where I spend the majority of my time when I'm in the studio. So from that last shot, if you turned around and looked, you'd see this wall of 42 drawers with full extension runners in a cabinet that I built years ago for my organization. There's a drawer with my router bits, my drill bits, everything in its place makes it easier to find things. Not that things don't get lost, but I do what I can to try to make things as organized as possible. I also keep relevant models and paint samples for reference. And you can see this little shelving unit here. Many of these pieces capture the germ of an idea that I built on to create new works. But to me, a lot of times these little, what I call three-dimensional sketches that is the creative moment. That is the thing where the aha moment where you've figured out how to do something. And so it's reference for me. And, a lot of artists have sketchbooks. I have sketchbooks, but much more often I have three-dimensional objects that I hang on to. And that's gives me since I'm making three-dimensional objects, a three-dimensional sketch makes a lot of sense to me. I have a variable speed robust lathe. This is a shot of it. It's very long. lathe. It has a bed extension. It gives me 10 feet between centers, which is kind of funny because I've been making flowers as small as, 1/2 inch. Why do I need a lathe that long? For the flexibility to also turn long things. So here's a short little video. I was doing this sculpture, and I came to the last sphere at the top of it, and I envisioned this video, which I couldn't do because I was doing the turning. And I asked my wife Lucy to come out um, and have do a shot of me turning the wood and then pan down the length of it. So here, that was me with my movie director hat on. So let me, oops, sorry. Here it is. And you can't hear the sound of this, but sound's not working.
We can hear it, Mark. We can
Oh,
hear
you
it.
can?
Yeah, or I
Good.
can at least.
Okay. So that's that. I also had to figure out how to keep this long thing straight. It's 10 feet long, and how can I keep it from sagging? When I come out the next day, is it still going to be straight? So I would actually wedge it up to arch it a little bit in order to, my idea of what made sense to try to keep it straight. And here I am carving it. I wanted to create this illusion of melon forms that nest into one another from one angle to the next. Here I'm putting the finishing touches on two of these elements coming together. And there's the finished form. Overall, it's 11.5 feet. This was for a commission from Bucks County Community College to help celebrate their 50th anniversary. So that is standing in a common area at the school. Meanwhile, here I was back in my college days, the requisite look for an art student back in the early 70s, lots of hair. So that's around 1971. Of all the wood pieces that I did from college, this is one of my favorites. Flowing lines, kind of an Art Nouveau influence, a lot of hand carving. And after making this, I saw a turning demonstration, and I thought, well, maybe that's a way that I could combine things. I could combine carving with turning. Turning has a problem for me as a designer in that it creates radially symmetrical form, which is not something that I'm crazy about. I'd rather have it do something else. This obviously does something else, but then it's all handwork. So here are some early experiments. These would date back to in mid 70s of an idea that I had where a bowl would have two rims, one on sort of on the short part here and one on the length. And then I could do some kind of shape transition between the two. Here's another one. I was trying to create the illusion of wood having different characteristics, like its moldability, which is easily possible with clay, but not wood. Clay is an additive and subtractive material, whereas wood is only subtractive. And also some experiments that go back 50 years of multi-axis turning, where I'm shifting the center and creating parts and also carving it. So that aspect goes back a long way. Here's the shop at Bucks County Community College, and I'm conducting a critique for one of my turning classes. We had a great facility there, had some nice grants from Wingate, and had a state-of-the-art facility, and still have. Rick Mastelli, who was the editor of American Woodturner in 1995, dubbed me the multi-axis Mahatma. It's a title that I try to live up to. Two iterations of my multi-axis candlestick form. The one on the left is turned on 2 axes, and the one on the right, 6 sets or maybe more. My wife, Lucy, who's my best critic, said that she couldn't wait to see how it translated into furniture. which was an idea that really annoyed me at the time, but it did become a reality. 6 months later, this is what resulted. It's the same basic concept of the geometry of the axes of my earliest design for a candlestick. It's the same for both of these tables, but with very different visual results. The one on the left more spider-like, and the one on the right more rubbery knees because of the shapes that I'm doing there, kind of rounded forms. This is a more recent table with babinga is the wood for the top, and then it has these twisted legs. I also wanted to create the illusion of having each part of the leg look like it was drifting away from the next part. If you look at the square block at the top of the leg with the turn part below it, it shows something that's impossible to turn. So there's a certain amount of shaping necessary or carving necessary to create that illusion. I started making baseball bats in 1993. Always thought it would be interesting to combine that sport, but I just thought, a bat's a bat. It's just one thing. But then I came up with this idea for trying creating other types of visual imagery. This one was for a demonstration for a class at school, how to turn a long piece of green ash, 6 feet long, and how to steam bend it. Noted collector Irv Lipton wanted bats out of exotic woods. The dilemma that I had was not being able to get wood of sufficient size, so I made them all different sizes. And this one's in the permanent collection of the Museum of Arts and Design in New York City. Once I come up with an idea, I need to figure out how to make sense of it. Not only the idea, but actually make an object. I need to go back and do the engineering really. And so the drawing comes afterward, and it's to preserve that thought process. So, I refer to this and all the other drawings that I do often to if I need to get back there instantly rather than, reinvent the wheel each time. I wanted to make a knotted bat, and I realized that I needed a model because as simple as a knot seems, to visualize it from every view was much trickier than you'd think, or I thought. So this is rubber tubing, and again, it's invaluable when I want to do one of these details in a bat. This set was acquired by the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown 2 years ago, and that's Josh Rawich, who's the president in 2022. On the left is a squiggle, which I use as a detail on the handle of one of my bats. I wondered what it would look like if it had that wiggle shape on one side and an even outward curve on the other, and this was a result, and it looked like a figure. In my sketch, it looked like a handle. That's all I could see in it. But as I turned it, I thought, oh, the proportions weren't right, but this looked like a figure. In 1997, I spent the whole year making figures. The initial ones were bilaterally symmetrical. So here, the one on the left, if you split it down the middle vertically, the left half and the right half are the same. So it's like a figure at attention. But, I did a few of these and they were relatively small. And then I started thinking about trying to make a figure look like it was twisting and then turning the head and tilting the head, which brought into a lot of different subtleties into the turning planes, the axes that I had to figure out. And to me, these are some of the most challenging conceptually and complicated turnings that I've done. These range from 4 foot tall to 6 foot. And then the next slide I'm going to show you is of the second from the right, that it's an ash figure, and it's a process shot. So the front of it is on the bottom side here, and then I'm about to turn it on to turn the back side of it. And here's a shot that I took of it while it's rotating on the lathe. And I'm so glad that I took this photo. It shows a lot. I mean, you can see right through it. And it was, but I'm very careful. I set it up with the tool rest on the left, so it was as close as could be without touching the wood. And I'm only working on one little area at a time. It's very scary, but exhilarating. I mean, normally when you start turning, it's kind of chunky, like you hit the wood in a couple of spots, and then finally it gets round, and then everything's smooth and it goes a lot, lot easier. But for this one, once I got it round, quote unquote, I was turning 1 foot of it, and then I had 3 feet of air. So I had to adjust how to hold the tool and where the pressure should be in order to accommodate that. So that, it was a big learning curve of being able to create it. Here's a pair of figures representing a couple. They are each facing each other, but their heads are turned toward us, toward the viewer. Something that I've often pursued is illusion or animation with what is usually viewed as a rigid, radially symmetrical form, like in this instance, bowling pins. I wanted to create an artwork that that took this recognizable form and create a nurturing composition. So that's what I ended up with there. Changing the size significantly and kind of bending them in toward one another. Other avenues I've gone down is for vessel forms, which, in the turning world, the hollow vessel is the sacred object. It's a turning that's hollowed out on the inside, and I've never made one of those. There are so many people doing it and doing it really well. But I had this idea of turning a vessel in, that are the throwaway bottles and cans and jars, which led me into the next part, which is painting. Painting is something I did before becoming a woodworker. I was an art major in high school. And then, kind of put a lot of these things on hold as I began my woodworking, pursuing woodworking. But it was a way for me to come back and then, come up with some graphic design and also painting the labels on these bottles, lager here, and coming up with color schemes that seem to work well. Another diversion or tangent was going to the local butcher, the Herring Brothers, and seeing all these deer heads mounted up high and thinking, well, why are all those deer heads up there? I mean, I got it that the owner or whoever killed all these deers, but I'm not a hunter. But I thought if I were a hunter, I might keep one, and that would be over the mantle or something. But then one day, a customer was talking to the owner about one of them, and he said he was talking about the third one down, and he talked about how he was in Saskatchewan and he shot the deer and he had to drag it 3 miles out to the road, and and it was all about the story. And I thought, well, geez, I can do that. And that's when I started an ongoing series called Game Hunting in North America. So these are about many places that I've been or imagined and what the elusive animal is of that area. This was one of them. Detail. I also, I don't have more slides of this, but as the more recent ones that I've done, that's one of the first ones. But the teeth, I realized teeth aren't perfect, and man, animals don't have dentists, so there must be a lot of angled teeth and different problems. So I made sure that I had a lot of tartar in there, and the teeth weren't straight. So I got a great commission from Yale University for the art gallery to make a bench for public seating, and they wanted a drawing, and I didn't know what to do because a lot of the things that I do um, are are what a result of what I call spontaneous design. I do it as I go along. So certain things I have to figure out, like what the joinery is doing in here. So that's sort of the engineering part of it. But the actual other parts, I really kind of am playing as I'm making it. So, um, and I can draw something beforehand. I used to do it all the time, but I also felt that it would hinder the how creative it could be. So my solution for it was to actually make a full size end panel model out of basswood or poplar or something, and then draw that. And that was the perfect solution because I could do my creative part and then still satisfy that requirement of giving a drawing to them. I began collaborating in 1985 with Robert Dodge, who has work at the Michener, and he taught drawing and painting at Bucks County Community College. This was an early one that I really enjoyed called Bugs and Thugs, which it was my concept, and then I did the turning, the carving, and handed it to him. And he said, I don't know what I'm looking at here. So I had to give him a sketch of what was happening, and then he filled in the blanks. So that was a fun one to do. But we made over a dozen screens together from the late 80s to the early 90s. And 20 years later, Fleur Bressler, a collector in DC, uh, wanted to commission a screen. And Robert had moved to Germany, and I really wanted to paint it anyway. So this was a pretty big project, and I was thrilled to do it. This is about 7 feet high and 4 feet wide or so. If you're in Philly, be sure to visit the Museum for Art and Wood. My first solo museum show titled La Familia ended there just 2 weeks ago. My second solo museum show is at the Michener now. So I've had two in 1 year and never had one before that. Opening March 7th is a solo exhibition by Katie Hudnall, and she does great work. I've known her over the years pretty well, and I'm sure it'll be a great show. For my show, this was an image used for the cover of the catalog. It's the Ellis Islanders, a collection of small turned and carved figures made from holly. And talking about process now, this was where this piece started and where it ended up. So um, um, you can see the sketch directly on the wood, including the lines that represent the axis for turning various parts of it. And then the stages of me turning those parts. And then, you can see the carving too. So that's how it finished up. I'd done a lot of this. So some of it's sort of second nature, but I also have to figure things out and, figure out where I'm going with it too. But everything sort of builds on something that I've done before. This was another series called Family Tree. And I viewed these as three-dimensional photographs where the portrait is coming out at you through the frame. The painting came months later. Carving, these are not turned, they're all hand carved out of Western yellow cedar. And that's one kind of activity carving. It's most of them, they're all done on the lathe, not with the lathe spinning, but just carving it while it's on the lathe. But I typically separate that activity from painting because they're so different from one another, and they involve a different part of the brain to make them. So that brings us to the flower show. So we finally got there here at the Michener, and that, as Laura pointed out, this show is up until May 4th. In the fall of 2022, my son Sam and daughter-in-law Kim got married, coincidentally at the Museum for Art and Wood, where my exhibition was. They did not allow real flowers because of the pollen and bugs around the artwork. I volunteered back in the spring of 2022, 2.5 years ago, almost 3 now, to make them. Ranunculus was her favorite flower, which I never heard of. I researched it and tried to make one. So that was the very first one I tried to do. And this was the result, just the top part of that one on the left. And it was awful. And I thought, should I just give up? How should I approach it? And I decided that not to look at flowers anymore, but rely on my memory of what flowers look like, and also rely on forms that I could make using my skills as a wood turner and carver. This one is the only functional flower that I made, and that I mounted to this basin and put these bamboo skewers coming out of it, and we use it to dry plastic bags. So it's a functional piece. These are the two vases that flanked Kim and Sam at their wedding. Um, One thing to note, and you'll see this as we go along here, is that for the most part, these are side view designed forms. They're painted with graphic elements that relate to those forms. So in other words, I'm looking at flowers from the side view. For most of them, there are a couple that are more top view design. But I noticed that once they were in place, you couldn't even see those. So that I thought that that was interesting. This is a photo of their actual wedding. The bases that the vases are on were in the exhibition at the Museum for Art and Wood, but they were, this is actually at their wedding. And this was a bouquet made for the bride out of holly, which is a beautiful white wood. Most of the flowers in the flower show are made from holly. And brass is what I used for the stems. Here's Sam wearing his boutonniere. So all these pieces are in the exhibition. The two vases of flowers, her bouquet, and his boutonniere. This is not in the exhibition. These were flower pins for the wedding party. They're not in the show because they were gifts for the wedding party. The event was captured by my friend, noted Bucks County painter Robert Beck, who did this oil painting while the ceremony was going on, which was great. I thought that all the flowers should be part of the La Familia show because it was all about family, but I was informed that that show was full. So they became the cornerstone pieces for of their own of their own show here. And I pitched the idea to Laura, and she was open to it, which was great because I really wanted to keep making flowers. And this is a graphic that I did that was used as a small logo on the catalog cover. A younger person would probably have done something in digitally. This is old school, as much of my work is. It's a 22 by 30 painting on Arches 300-pound watercolor paper with acrylic paint. So I did it big, and then you can reduce it down to a logo. I also did this, which was 22 by 22. That was also reduced down to a catalog page of 8-inch by 8-inch. This French boxwood flower probably comes the closest to a recognizable flower, a tulip. It's an early design that's a good example of a side view designed flower. And the stem here is a bamboo skewer. So you can kind of see the whole thing there from the side view. So you see the classic kind of S curve shape. And we go to the next one, and it's the same kind of thing in the upper left, a little bit more exaggerated. But here, and you can see the pencil drawing of it here, and then this is sort of the bottom part of it there. I wanted to do it asymmetrically, where one part curved up and then the other one was shorter. So this is, this has all the curve to it. So it's sort of like a symmetrical form with half of it being like a tulip, but then there's only a small part that's coming out that way. And then the result was this, which I thought looked pretty interesting, especially two as a pair to create this arch. These are my canards, the ducks. So they're sort of arching toward one another. But for the most part, the flowers in the exhibition, I became much more interested in top view design flowers and stems that were curved. Of course, you can see it does have a side view in the middle, kind of a classic, classical shape vase. But it's the carving on the top that gives it its main feature. On the left, you can see, I think, the pencil lines there. I drew guidelines, used a circle template to draw these, and then made these kind of almost like football shapes to either side, shaping it. And then they finished at looking like that. So I have this separation. So the spear under it continues across and it has this separation. And I put these two little notches on it. And to me, I call it a butterfly. Um, so and the bent stems allow me to angle the flower so you're actually looking at that top part of it. You know, they're not standing up straight. I wanted to texture and bend the stems. I found this beat up old pitted anvil and tried using it for hammering the stems. It was a perfect solution for this application. If I were in the market for an anvil, this would not be on one's radar. But for me, I thought that maybe it could work, and I was thrilled with the result. So all that pitting and everything gave this great texture to all of those surfaces. Here's a fixture that holds the flower while I carve it. It's totally adjustable. And it's right there in my face, so I can just use both hands on my tools rather than try to hold it. It's very difficult making a small object. You know, you have to have a way to hold it. And you don't want your fingers too close to, you know, a turning object or something like that. So as you can see here, there's a section of this at the bottom that's engaged in the chuck, and I'm just working on that part of it. Here's a little video of now it's been turned and it's been carved. And now I put it back on the lathe to finish off the bottom. So here it is being turned off. And you can see the shape of it is something you know, it's you wouldn't expect that, but that's what's happening while it's spinning around. Here's another one. The top left photo shows the piece turned and on the chuck for the first part of the process. And I have a ruler here measuring the distance from here to the peak of this part, because typically I would make 3 or 4 of these of any design, and then I would go on to the next design and just keep going. So this is really just for my reference, but I also took a few of the flowers. I've taken process shots of, you know, where it started, where it kind of evolved to, and you know, where it ended up here. So um, I've just found that there's so many possibilities in a very small space, and it kind of surprises me. I thought there'd be a couple, but I probably did at least 30 or 40 designs, and there's plenty more. And here again, you see the upper left, that shape here, and then the carving that goes along. This one kind of looks to me like a stylized rose. Um, so these are all sort of sketches that I just do on the wood and then start carving them. This one is slightly dished, so I have the ruler to check what the depth is from here to the bottom, and then the carving. Because all these are straight turnings, the dish at the bottom is right in the middle, but I've laid these out in a way that to offset it. So you see the center point is down toward the bottom here, and it allows these to be larger and getting smaller as they come around. And then there's the finished pinwheel. It's off to the left there. Another design is this one. This has a little kind of button at the top, which is right in the middle. So, you know, that one's not shifted off center. And then I'm carving around it with these flutes that sort of radiate around that button at the top. Here it is a little further along. And then this still has some edges here, which I decided to erase. And in the finished piece, you see here, there's still the suggestion of them, but they're softened, and it has a much, you know, pretty organic shape to it all around, except for that top button. You can see from the sketch on this that I was really playing around. It kept changing, like what I wanted to do there. And then I only have 2 shots of this one that It has a line going through it this way and this way, as you can see there, and then I'm just shaping away from that. So again, off center, sort of like a four-leaf clover a little bit. Sometimes you get surprises, like I made 5 of these. Obviously, there are 5 of them there, of these um, flowers that are like that tulip one that I talked about. And I don't want these things rolling around, so I have to put them in something and to keep them contained. And a lot of times that's just an egg crate or something. And these I put together and thought, oh, that's pretty interesting. You know, the way kind of like MC Escher, where the shapes are evolving into each other. So I took a photograph of it, and then I put 5 of them together, and I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And then I did 10, and I thought, you know, it's to me, it's just a really interesting graphic that might lead to something. I'm not sure if I'd do it or not, but something like that. But maybe they're half flowers and it's just you know, a panel of them or something. But so I'm always open to things as I'm making them. This piece is called Spring Hopes Eternal, which the title comes from the phrase "Hope springs eternal," which is in an Alexander Pope poem, an essay on man. And I just switched the words around a little bit. And this is 6" by 6" by 6. And you see the sort of three-dimensional view of it, and then also the plan view, which oftentimes is very different. You know, it's a different kind of feel. In the exhibition, there are 4 of these, and they're grouped together. Passionate Kisses. Um, I was surprised when I carved this one and it looked like lips. It wasn't what I was trying to do. It's just what came out. So there are always surprises. Most of these are surprises. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Very few of them get tossed out. There are a couple like ranunculus, but a couple others that didn't, you know, do anything for me. But most of them I'm happy with. If it's not working out, I recognize it and I'll just throw it away and go on to something else. But these are all the same lip thing, and the group each is called, or the grouping is called Passionate Kisses. So here are about 30 different designs. For I don't know how many months it was, probably 3 or 4 months. I was just into mass production of making the flower buds. And, you know, I'd work 7 days a week. I would come up with an idea and then I'd make it, and then I'd make 2 or 3 others. And then by the time I'm on the last one, I'm thinking about the next one. Sometimes it's in the middle of when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking, oh, I should try that. And then I'd go out and, oh, I hope we're still on. We got stopped for a second there. Um, uh, where was I? Okay, so then with all these flowers, I thought, okay, now I can make some bases and have these flowers and you know, just be able to pick from them. So it was sort of like a kid in a candy shop. You could just grab whatever and then incorporate them into a design. So I wasn't thinking about, I want to make a bouquet with 8 flowers. Now I need to design 8 flowers. I could just pick and choose from these. But I also realized that once they were all gone, I didn't have an image of each flower, what it looked like. I had a shot of them grouped, but not individually. So I started doing this, and I'm very happy that I did. I'm gonna move this a little bit here. So because now I have a record, and I kind of like that too, just this graphic black and white um, image of it. I do all my own photography, and which, you know, typically involves 2 things: product photography, which is capturing the overall shot, and then there's the kill shot, the really, to me, interesting detail at some angle, or, you know, just somehow putting things together and looking at them with a photographic eye, not as I said, product photography, which needs to include the whole thing. So I had this idea. I wanted to make 5 flowers in a base that's carved. These, you know, the bases are all single pieces. They're not glued up or somehow else put together. And so I came up with that detail, and I decided to make 3 of these, and they were all going to be the same. not look the same, but they would be the same base, same coloring of the base, all have five flowers and all have, five buds at the top. So this was the first one, and I called it the lineup. As in, you could say this is hindsight here, but a police lineup because it is at the Michener, which after all was a prison. So whatever, I didn't think of it that way. It was just a lineup of people. And I made three. So this was the first one, and I wanted to try something different with each one. So the second one on the left is familial lineup. So it's the two parents and then there are the kids. They're smaller, right? So all of these effects are created by the stems. It's not the distinctiveness of the flowers, it's the stems that are doing this, the different lengths, the bends. And after that, I thought, what am I going to do next? And I came up with this idea of the gossipers. So you have three gossipers on the left-hand side hammering at each other. And then the fourth one is kind of like listening in a little bit. And then the fifth one wants nothing to do with it. So it's again that animated effect that's primarily done with the stems. Wildflowers was an idea that I had. This hangs on the wall, and I thought I want to do a plan view looking down at a plot of land and having four rows and four columns of flowers planted in them. So I made up the panel. I think it's about 16 inches by 16, and laid these lines out perfectly, vertical and horizontal, drilled them precisely, and then put the flowers in them. And I just thought, it's not doing it for me. I really wanted them to be, it was too sterile. I wanted them to be more organic looking. And so it was lacking compositionally. I didn't want to throw out my base. I thought I could still use that if I just started bending them a little. And I did that. And then I bent them a little more. And then this was the resulted in this, which really appealed to me. It still has vague references to four rows and four columns, but it's done in a much more, organic way, how flowers actually grow. They're not growing perfectly straight up. And then I have that subtle carved surface of each of the flowers of white contrasted against this black background that's been carved and painted. And I thought that that made a great uh, format for showing, a presentation for showing the flowers. In the exhibition, it looks like this, which is really dramatic light from above. And so now you have two layers of that background. You have the one I carved, and then you have the shadow, the hard shadow of each of them. So it's a yet another layer and of contrast. So that was neat. I wasn't thinking of it that way, but it looks great. I did three other wall pieces, and these are called wallflowers. And the idea, like with family tree, is that they're coming out of the wall. So like the vase is coming out and the flowers are coming out. And it's got the same textured background as wildflowers. And I also combined a few different species of wood to make the flowers. They're kind of twisting toward each other. These I sort of saw as a pair too, and flanking or something. And they have different species also. The holly, they're white ones, and then French boxwood and can't think of what the other one is. Yellowheart, I think. But again, everything's contrasted against the background. The stems here are mahogany. I mean the base. 20 fleurs, which is 20 flowers. All of these flowers are different from one another design-wise. Again, not a problem. I had tons to choose from. And if you look at this compositionally, it kind of is like a balloon that's symmetrical, the overall shape of it. So I was a little bit more timid in my layout for this. And I sort of envisioned that. I've never done flower arranging or anything like that. I just, so this was an earlier attempt. And I thought I had this idea of a bed, and then they're all sort of coming out from the middle. And I want to talk, because I already had flowers and I had the stems, that I could use any way I wanted to. It gave me more opportunity to play with the vases or the bases. So here's a process shot. The first two here just show the flat, and then it has these two angled portions, as legs or something, holding up that raised bed, as it were. And then then it's carved a little bit more. This part's been shaped away, so you can see that. And then the next one shows it with this is the front view and this is the back view. So I've laid out all the holes for the ones that I'm going to put in, and the flowers I'm going to put in, and I've done the texturing. And you see that the front and the back are very different from one another. So typically you're seeing it only from the front, and then there's a zigzaggy line on the back side. And then the last two slides, images, show what it looks like. This shows this from the back, and then this is from the bottom. So it appears as though these canted elements go front to back, but they don't. They go to a center point down here. As a maker, I'm always looking at things from all different views, but in the end, it's the kill shot. What does it look like from the front view or three-quarter view or something like that? Um, so, and then I have this little video, very short. It's squeaky. Sorry about that. I also use my lathe as my clamping device, carving clamp. Okay, so I spend more time carving than I do turning, and it's hard when you have an irregular shape to clamp it. You make marks on it. So I just thought if I leave it on the lathe and then clamp it tight, I can twist it. I don't know if you can hear that squeak, but so I can put it in any position I want to and do my shaping, and only have to clean the ends off when I'm finished. So it's an expensive clamp, but I'm doing that rather than turning. So I have it there for me, and now it's just standard practice. Whenever I'm doing any kind of carving, I just put it on the lathe to hold it for me. Œuf et fleur, which is eggs and flower. So there are two egg shapes in here. Now notice if vin fleur was orderly, this one is wild, right? So, and that was my intention. I just wanted it to really go off in all different directions. Different species of wood, Bacodi, this is the holly. I think this is pearwood here, and ebony here and here, and boxwood. So that was my intention, chaos. So just very different ways of thinking about what these would look like. Another satisfied customer. Here's Mira Nakashima with her Trois Fleurs. So I made 5 groups of larger flowers, 2 groups, these two, with a natural finish. This is cherry as the wood. These are quite big. They're about 5 inches in diameter. And then here's a close-up looking at them from the top view, but still it's a little confusing. Like, what does this actually look like? And here it is this is at the exhibition, taken from an angle so you can see what's happening with those different parts of it. This one's unique. I didn't do any smaller ones like that. This one is a design that I really liked from the smaller ones that I did for upscaled it to here. And many of these are unique ones that I didn't do on a smaller scale. So these are 3 groupings of 3 each, and they're all painted. I wanted to circle around to where I started by making painted flowers, but in a very different way. One that was less reliant on imposed graphics and more reliant on texture and graduated color to help emphasize the form. And then here's a nice close-up of them. So in the catalog, this is on the right page, and the last shot was on the left page. So you're seeing it in very different ways. Again, I just really liked, and I was lucky that there were 9 because it just worked perfectly with 3 and 3. And then here's a shot of an installation shot of 3 of them in one group. I also really enjoy making block prints, something that I was doing before my woodworking career, and it's something that I fall back from time to time over the past 20 years to to me it gives another perspective of the subject that I'm working on with my woodworking. I did this print titled "Cut Flowers," and it's a block print made to capture some of the forms two-dimensionally, and I also made the frame for it. Here are two others, Des Fleurs and La Familia on the right side. These were all done in the late summer this year or last year and printed with Sandra Shikatani, great printmaker. Andrea Thompson took her 3 to 6 year old students from the Learning to Look and Listen class to see my print that's in the show, and they went back to the classroom and made these. They also simulated the frame, the color of the frame, particularly in the one in the middle. I just think these are great. There's so much creativity with young people that we, all us old people, try to aspire to be young again. So, about a year and a half ago, Bruce Katza, former director of the Michener, the person that hired me at Bucks County Community College, asked if he could come to my studio and do a portrait. And I was thrilled with that idea. When he came, he posed me with one of my sculptures and he started taking photographs from different angles. He said it was for a series called Facial Mapping. I asked him if I could see it when it was done, and he said that he would, but he warned me that most people don't like the final result. But I really like it. I thought it turned out pretty cool. So. Robert Beck approached me about doing a painting of me in my studio in 2021, and this was what he painted. It was kind of interesting. I walked around my shop to think where would be the perfect place to do a painting, and I came up with a spot. He walked around and it was the same spot, so I thought that was pretty neat. But it really captures what it feels like to be there, working in my studio. This is me during my COVID years. I think that this part of the exhibit really helps with telling the story of the process. It shows the original sketches, a flower in process, and all the tools that I use. And I credit Joshua Lessard for that. He wanted to have the tools and stuff, and I just thought, oh, that sounds really cool. So people ask me how long I've been making flowers. The answer is that for 2.5 years. These are pretty much all the flowers that I've ever made. So it's been an interesting tangent for me. I'm still interested in doing flowers, but I don't know what I'll be doing next. So it's all good. Again, kudos to Joshua Lessard for yet another spectacular exhibition. His first installation at the Michener was the Wharton Esherick exhibit, Daring Design, the Influence of Three Women on the Craft of Wharton Esherick in 2021. It's a show that I co-curated with Laura Igo, which he did the layout for in two weeks. I think he had to do it. And then has done every exhibition in between. This is my granddaughter, Simona, around a year old. I dedicated the catalog to her. What 1-year-old gets a book dedication? I know I never did. I'd like to thank Jen for her help with this talk and for organizing my March 12th in-person artist talk at the Michener. Thanks to all the staff who have been supportive of me throughout the process. Thank you to Joshua. I already talked about him enough. That's enough, Joshua. It's going to go to his head, and the next show is not going to be good. No, just kidding. Thank you to Laura, who curated this show and wrote a great essay for the catalog. And I'd like to thank Ann Corso, the director of the museum, for her leadership, enthusiasm, and for carrying the museum into the future. Thank you all too for taking the time to hear my talk, and hopefully you'll get to see the shows in person. That's it.
Thanks, Mark. Are you willing to take questions if anyone wants to type them into the chat or Q&A? Just for a few minutes.
If it's a good question.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much for your talk.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I've actually seen a photo of the ranunculus flower that
Oh,
know
yeah.
you described as a toilet bowl float, but I don't think you actually showed it to me. So
Yeah.
that was really fun to see. Thanks for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
so any questions? Mark, you said you're still making flowers.
Well, I
Right.
really haven't been doing much of anything in my studio. I'm doing a few. I'm going to collaborate with Kristen Levere to do a piece. She'll use my flowers to make this kind of wreath thing. So that's a
Hmm.
collaborative piece I'm doing. But I'm, more in mode of having exhibitions right now. So
Yeah,
the programming and, all the other things that go on. So
right. The exhibition at the Michener plus Museum for Art and Wood
right.
is a lot at one time. We do have a question. Where do you get your wood?
Uh, I've been collecting wood my whole career. Whenever I needed wood, I'd go to a lumber yard, typically maybe in York, Pennsylvania. Uh, if there's a few places out there, I don't generally use what's known as roadkill, which means a tree, somebody has a tree they want to cut down or it falls down or whatever. There are a lot of people that do, it's free wood. I mean, it's work, but it's free wood and the wood's green. A lot of things I don't know what I'm going to use wood for, and typically I want dry wood. I don't want to wait the 1 year per inch in thickness it takes for wood to dry. So I buy kiln dried wood lumber, and coming from a furniture background, I'm used to dealing in planks. So I found somebody that is does this amazing drying process for the holly to keep it white. So, he charges a lot for it, but that's where I get my holly. It's just somebody I found out through a friend. But I've gotten things from the West Coast. I've gotten things. Um, I have a shop full of wood, so domestic's a whole lot easier. When you get into exotic woods, it's um, it's a little trickier, right? Because it's not a local sawmill that's cutting it. It was done comes from another country. But another question?
I think all I'm seeing primarily now are just thank yous and someone mentioning that they've crossed paths with you before. Great to see you speak this evening.
Well, great to hear from you, whoever you are.
Uh, my eyesight is terrible, so I can't tell if is it M?
It's E Valtry,
E what?
Valtri, E period Valtry. Earn.
Hmm.
They said your paths crossed briefly twice, once at the wood shop at Bucks County Community College, and once at a lumber yard.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. I think
And they
I
said that
Yeah,
today
sorry,
you
Eve Altry. Sorry. No.
underscored the friendly, humble modesty you extended me years ago. So,
thank you.
yes,
I think maybe you've just had such a thorough talk, Mark, that maybe you've answered
Everybody's
everyone's
speechless.
questions. You did mention, but I also want to give another plug for your upcoming artist talk on March 12th, which is from 1 to 2 p.m. and
Yeah.
that will be in person at the Michener.
Yes.
So please look online if you're interested on our website. You can register there as well. We'd love to. Mark, will that cover different material than what we did in the virtual talk?
Um, there'll be overlap for sure.
Mhm.
But and since I'll be there, we can we can go over see the exhibition and I can talk about things in
Yeah,
front of the work too. So
great.
but
Okay.
I know there are a number of people that are from outside the area, so this is their opportunity to hear. And I've talked to other people who live in the area and they say, well, I'm not going to I'll come to see you rather than the Zoom thing. So, it's to me, it's probably a different audience.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions right now.
Okay.
I think so. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their night.
Yep.
Okay.
Night, everybody.
All right, good
Okay.
night. Thanks,
Thanks.
Mark.
Yep. Bye-bye.